Seminary, I participated in an experience called the Plunge, in which I spent 24 hours on the streets of Louisville, Kentucky, pretending to be homeless. It was part of a classroom experience, and the professor invited any and all who were interested to participate. "I'll give you each 65 cents, he said, bus fare downtown. I want you to go with another student from the class and stay with your partner through the whole experience. But if you will, I want you to try it." And I signed up right away. In the week before the plunge, I didn't change my clothes, didn't shower or shave, and by the time Friday rolled around, I was looking the part. My partner, Roger, and I took our 65 cents and headed toward the bus stop, and on the way we saw a man getting into a blue van, and we asked him if we could have a ride downtown. "Why not?" he said. We got in, and on the way down we began to tell him what it was we were up to. "We're going to spend 24 hours on the streets of Louisville," we said. "We're going to pretend to be homeless." And he laughed out loud, reached down into a brown paper bag beside him, pulled out an empty beer can, almost empty, and sprinkled what was left on the front of my shirt. "There," he said, "that'll make you smell right." And then he dropped us off downtown. Roger and me, there we stood on the streets of the city, ragged, dirty, and stinking of stale beer, ready for our big adventure to begin. At first, it felt like an adventure. I remember putting a bottle cap in my shoe, forcing me to limp, thinking that that would seem more authentic somehow. I was limping down the sidewalk when I saw a limousine pull up to the curb in front of me, and Harvey Sloan, the mayor of Louisville, got out. I limped forward a little faster to ask him for some change, but he was too quick. Went inside a building. Roger and I went to the Wendy's just down the street. We asked for a cup of coffee, and the manager said, "Charge or no charge?" And Roger said, "Well, we don't have any money." And the manager handed over 2 cups of coffee as if we had just given him a $10 bill. A little later, one of the women who worked there came by and whispered to us in low conspiratorial tones, "If you want more coffee, I can get it for you." "Oh, that would be nice," we said. "Here," she said, handing me a pen, "write your name on the side of the cup." And instead of writing my name, I made a shaky blue X and handed it back, and she said, "That'll do." She went and got coffee and came back just a moment later with 2 cups, filled up and overflowing. That evening we panhandled in front of the Actors Theater of Louisville. There were all these people coming to the show, and we stood there asking for money. I was saying, "Could you let me hold on to a quarter, maybe 50 cents? A group of women came by and I said, "Could you let me have some money? I'll sing you a song." They didn't take me up on it. I was going to sing "You've Lost That Loving Feelings." Their loss, I'm sure. One of my professors from seminary and his wife came walking by. And I said, "Could you let me have a little money? Just a quarter, 50 cents? And he didn't even look up. Around midnight, I ended up in the Salvation Army shelter on an iron cot with squeaky springs and about 20 men sleeping all around, stinking, snoring, belching through the night. It was a long night. I was glad when morning finally came. Roger and I got up and out of there as quickly as we could and spent most of the rest of the morning just wandering around. At first I thought it would be important not to look like I was going somewhere. It would be better to wander aimlessly, and then it hit me. I didn't have anywhere to go. I was wandering around aimlessly. I ended up in front of the Galleria, which is kind of a fancy downtown shopping center in Louisville. It was March, but it was a warm, sunny day, unseasonably warm. And I sat on a bench in front of the Galleria and soaked up the sunshine for a little while. I watched a woman and her daughter come out of the entrance and come walking toward me, and because I was in a good mood, I said hello to them and waved. The little girl waved back, but the mother looked right through me, as if I wasn't even there. And once I noticed it in her, I began to notice it in everybody. People came out of this store. I would smile and wave. They would look past me. They would look around me. They would look through me. But they didn't see me. They just walked by with their heads held high, and I disappeared a little piece at a time. Just before noon, Roger and I went to the Cathedral of the Assumption on 5th Street. We had heard that they gave away sandwiches after the noon Mass. And because we were there early and had nothing else to do, we went on in and sat on the back pew. I watched as an earnest young priest stood up before the 12 or 15 people who had gathered in that enormous room for worship. And he read from Luke chapter 15 and began to preach about Jesus, who was in trouble with the scribes and Pharisees once again for welcoming sinners and eating with them. Jesus kept bad company, the young priest said. He rendered himself guilty by association. He welcomed sinners and tax collectors, and the religious people of his day couldn't stand it. The religious people of our day, he said, have trouble with it. Some of our own parishioners wish that we would turn the homeless away. But if Jesus wouldn't turn them away, then neither can we. It was a good homily. I loved it. I was sitting back there nodding my head through the whole thing. And when he had celebrated the Eucharist, he went to the back door to shake hands with a few people who were leaving. And then he came over to where I was sitting. "What's your name?" he said. "Jim." "How are you, Jim?" he said. And he reached out to shake my hand. I realized it was the first time in nearly 24 hours that anyone had offered to touch me. First time in all that time that anyone had made me feel like a person. The first time someone had really seen me. And I got a lump in my throat, which made it hard for me to ask the question that had been on my mind since I came in through the door. "Do you all give away any food?" I know how it is. I know that sometimes when you're walking down the sidewalk and you see someone who might ask you for something, you turn your head. Because you know, if you look, if you make eye contact, if you see that person, if you acknowledge his existence, it's going to cost you something. It might cost you money, it might cost you time, it might cost both, but it's going to cost you something to see a person standing there. In this passage from Matthew 25, Jesus wants us to know that not seeing that person will cost us even more, that there will, in fact, be hell to pay. "Depart from me," he says, "you accursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels." Oh, wait a minute, you say. Wait just a minute. Preacher, before you go down that road, remember, Paul had some things to say about salvation. I've read the whole New Testament. He says that we are saved by grace, through faith, and not by works, lest any person should boast. I know that. I've read that part of the New Testament too. I don't want to argue with you. But I don't want to be wrong about this. I don't want to stand in front of the King someday and hear him say, "I was hungry and you didn't feed me.